Tell me what it felt like to see that little piece of Quentin's skull and pick it up and realize what it was.
It was heartbreaking.
Was it rewarding also? I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Chatham County Police Officer Sophia Zerke struggled to hold back her tears as she revealed the fate of 20-month-old Quentin Simon in court. Hundreds of volunteers had searched for the body of the missing child, and as the person who finally managed to find him, Sophia felt a personal connection to the case. This trial was the culmination of years of investigative efforts that ultimately, inevitably, and repeatedly led police to one suspect. It was a time of great emotional upheaval for the people of Georgia's Chatham County, and they desperately tried to understand who could possibly hurt an innocent child who'd barely even begun to walk. Today, we're going to unpack the horrific murder of Quentin Simon, a case that left even hardened police officers breaking down in tears. It was an ordinary morning on October 5th, 2022, when Leilani Simon woke up and went to Quentin's room. To her shock, the child was nowhere to be seen. At around 9:42 p.m., she placed a frantic call to the police, saying that her child was missing. When officers arrived on the scene, Leilani was in a complete state of disarray. She was so distraught that she could barely speak, and she was certain that someone had kidnapped her child. News media obviously took notice of such a shocking case, and before too long, an uncomfortable spotlight was cast on the Simon household, one that brought all sorts of hidden darkness out in the open. House of turmoil. Leilani Simon had 3 children, 2 of whom came from past relationships, and 1 child from her current relationship. Her eldest was 4-year-old Zane, whom she primarily raised alone since his father, Cody Wharton, hadn't been in the picture for a while. Then there was Leilani's daughter, 9-month-old Sky, whom she had with her current boyfriend, Daniel Youngkin, who she often said she was deeply in love with. Finally, there was 20-month-old Quentin, who Leilani had with her ex-boyfriend, Henry Bubba Moss. Bubba never wanted a kid, and he apparently asked Leilani to get an abortion. She refused to consider it, and as a result, Quentin's birth certificate didn't even have his father's name on it. Her and Bubba's relationship fell apart about a month after Quentin was born, when she accused him of theft, but he implied that she was the one who stole to fund her alleged substance addictions. This tension extended beyond the young couple, though. Living with them were Leilani's mother, Billy Joe Howell, and her stepfather, Thomas Howell. It's safe to say that Billy and Leilani had a love-hate relationship, with Leilani feeling like her mother didn't give her enough affection while she was growing up. Billy also stepped in to take care of Quentin, who seemed to be Leilani's least favorite child. She took custody of Quentin at some point, though Leilani claimed that this was just on paper, and that she was the person that actually took care of the infant. But with that said, Leilani had countless signs of a turbulent mental state that may have affected her family. In August of 2022, Leilani recorded a video of herself sobbing while driving. She claimed that she was about to end her life and made passive-aggressive remarks about her mother not holding her whenever her heart got broken. She also pointed at Daniel for no longer being attracted to her.
I screamed for help, and I don't get it. This guy, you are such a beautiful little girl. I wish I could watch you grow up. I wish I could hold you for your first heartbreak, because my mama didn't. And Danny, I loved you. I loved you with all of me, all of my heart. I loved you. I don't feel the love in your touch anymore.
Nothing really came of this apparent suicide attempt. Leilani simply returned home and life resumed as usual, which is to say the constant fighting never changed. Tensions flared up considerably on September 8th when Billy told Leilani and Daniel that they had to move out of the house. She filed an official eviction about a week later. On September 22nd, about 2 weeks before Quentin's disappearance, over a load of clothes of all things, the altercation turned violent when Leilani shouted in her mother's face, prompting Billy to shove her away. The police were called, something that happened all too often in a household that seemed to be defined by domestic disturbances. Things were getting worse, and many members of the household felt that Leilani was largely to blame. Her severe substance abuse issues caused friction between her and Daniel on multiple occasions, and often interfered with her ability to be a mother to her kids. This core issue would come into play mere hours before Quentin seemingly vanished off the face of the earth. At around 10 p.m. on October 4th, Leilani and Daniel had an enormous argument. The doubt that Leilani had been experiencing about Daniel's lack of affection kept bubbling to the surface, and her substance abuse had started to spiral out of control. Psychologists and behavioral analysts have said that Leilani experienced emotional dysregulation, which is to say that she had disproportionately extreme emotional responses. This dysregulation is something that many people are able to overcome through therapy and medication. Leilani chose to numb herself with illegal substances. Ironically, she preferred a particular kind of stimulant that only increased her erratic, turbulent behavior. Whatever she and Daniel thought about that night, it made her want to disappear in a cloud of narcotics as soon as possible. According to GPS data obtained from her car, Leilani headed straight to her narcotics dealer's home at around 10:45 p.m. and spent 10 minutes or so purchasing high-strength painkillers, stimulants, and herb. What happened in the hours between then and sunrise were only revealed during the trial that followed. For the time being, the next link in the chain of information formed at 5:39 a.m. when Michelle McMarta, Quentin's babysitter, received a text asking her to take the day off. She was told that her services weren't needed on that particular day, and the message seemed to have come from Daniel. Michelle was probably one of the most positive people in Quentin's life. She loved him as if he were her own son, and was always ready to go the extra mile for him. When she was told to take the day off, she decided to take the opportunity to relax, though Quentin probably never left her thoughts. Little did she know she'd never see the child again.
I am been keeping Quentin and Zane for 6 months. I kept them yesterday, and they went home last night.
Diana McCarta says she babysits little Quentin and his siblings and was supposed to watch them this morning. She says she was confused as to why plans would change so suddenly.
Shortly before October 5th, 2022, Billy had left Quentin in her mother's care for the first time in quite a while. No one expected anything serious to go wrong. At around 6 a.m., Daniel claims to have seen Quentin in his playpen as he was heading out to work. But Leilani wasn't able to find him when she woke up 3 hours later. She told the police that he was wearing a light blue Sesame Street shirt with black shorts or bottoms the last time she saw him, and alleged that his father Bubba might have taken him. As it turned out, Bubba was just the first of many people that she'd accuse. Before the 911 call was made, babysitter Michelle received a text asking if she knew where Quentin was.
And then I get a text at 9 o'clock saying, "Have I seen Quentin?" I immediately go to their house. I try to help them look. They didn't want that. So I've just been waiting around like everybody else.
The fact that nobody wanted her to search the house was bizarre, to say the least. As far as anyone knew, Quentin could have been hiding underneath a piece of furniture somewhere, or engaged in any other kind of mischief toddlers can get into. It's even stranger considering how Thomas and Billy, Quentin's grandparents, responded to the situation.
It's been crazy. I mean, we don't know nothing. Whether it's the answers we want to hear or answers we don't want to hear, we just want to know something. My concern is him, and that's all it is. I mean, we concerned with his well-being.
They clearly seemed distraught, but refused the help of someone who truly cared for Quentin. Regardless, police quickly started to investigate the disappearance, and the FBI were called in a few days later. They got to work trying to find something, anything that would point to Quentin's location. But it didn't take long for them to realize that one person in particular seemed to be an extremely likely suspect. By the way, I post true crime and new cases here every day, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. It helps a lot. Before investigators uncovered the truth, they suspected that Bubba, Quentin's father, might be to blame. They interrogated him and found out that Leilani had been physically abusive towards him multiple times in the past, especially when she wanted him to buy her narcotics. CCTV footage ultimately cleared him of any wrongdoing, and investigators started to suspect that maybe Leilani herself was somehow involved in the disappearance. They'd noticed her erratic behavior. At times, she'd be inconsolable about her son's disappearance. At others, she seemed to not care about Quentin's absence at all. Meanwhile, Billy was starting to spiral herself. As the days went by, she got increasingly anxious and started looking for anyone to point the finger at. The babysitter proved to be an easy target, with Billy heading over to her home one day and verbally assaulting her.
Don't put nothing in your yard. Go ahead. This is my baby, not yours. That's your right, boy. That's my baby. I texted you and I told you what was going on. I'm gonna announce my fault. You need to go get it. I text you. I got your text. Over and over. I got the text. Over and over I asked you. So you want to blame me? I don't care about your text. You think I'm gonna hit you at me? Do you think I would do that? Yeah. Really? Because you. I'm what?
No one likes
I'm
y'all.
what?
You blame
I'm what? No, I don't blame nobody. I should not have been out of town.
you did. You shouldn't have.
No, I did.
The situation could have easily spiraled into physical violence, but fortunately, Billy wasn't going to implicate herself while she was being recorded. Michelle was able to get out of the situation without a scratch, although she was left deeply disturbed by the accusations Billy hurled at her. As the people most affected by the case began to unravel, investigators started to close in on the person they felt was the true culprit. On October 10th, 5 days after Quentin went missing, authorities officially declared it a criminal case. 2 days later, they said that Quentin was almost certainly deceased and named Leilani as the prime suspect. This sent her on the defensive as she appeared on local TV to clear her name.
I'm here, I've been here every day since this. I am not running and I'm not hiding. And if something does come up that I am at fault, I will take myself to that police station.
Protesters had started gathering outside Leilani's home. She claimed that she just wanted her son back and that she was being harassed. Even so, she wasn't doing much to help the investigation. In fact, she was doing quite the opposite, with some sources saying that she hosted parties at her home instead of going out to look for her son. On October 18th, police stated that Quentin's remains were probably in a landfill somewhere. A massive search ensued, with volunteers and police officials alike scouring every possible location to find some sign of the child. While all of this was happening, Leilani and Billy reportedly went to a bar and seafood joint called Stingrays on nearby Tybee Island. Maybe they were trying to distract themselves from the horrific situation they were in, but to most people, it seemed strange that they decided to do so by partying and drinking. It's more likely that they were trying to escape the walls closing in on them. A Facebook message sent by Billy in late October read, "Quentin has passed. He's in a landfill. And my daughter done it. She has no memory of it." It appears that Leilani had made some kind of confession to her mother, and instead of taking her to the authorities, Billy decided to cover it up. Despite that, it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. For over a month, groups continued to sift through tons of garbage in the hopes of finding Quentin. Officer Sophia Zerke had volunteered to participate in the search. She'd been one of the first responders on the scene and was deeply affected by the sudden disappearance of a child. On November 28th, she stumbled across what appeared to be a piece of a human skull.
Yes, sir.
What do you remember about the point where it became not a normal day?
I was just breaking through the garbage, and then I had observed a white small object, could fit in the palm of my hand. It looked like bone to me, so I remember seeing my Lieutenant Foster, because they were all on the side, and contacting him, and they came over and removed it.
Though she was composed while talking about the experience during the trial, it shook her to her very core. She burst into tears by the end of her testimony, something that the culprit, who everyone now knew to be Leilani Simon, couldn't manage to do. Michelle McCarta met this news with great sorrow, just like everyone else in Chatham County. She held a candlelight vigil in Quentin's honor, trying to keep his memory alive however she could. While the remains were found on the 28th of November, Simon had already been arrested a week prior.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Hadley. I'm the Chief of Police for the Chatham County Police Department. I'm accompanied this evening by Will Clark with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This afternoon, Chatham County Police Department detectives arrested 22-year-old Leilani Simon and charged her with malice murder, concealing the death of another person, false reporting, and making false statements in connection with the disappearance and death of her son, 20-month-old Quentin Simon. Leilani Simon is being held at the Chatham County Detention Center and is awaiting a bond hearing. We do not anticipate any other arrests in this case. She has been the sole suspect from the beginning. On Friday, our search teams at the waste management landfill found what
There was enough evidence to convince investigators that she was the culprit, including footage that showed her going to a dumpster and throwing something inside. This turned out to be the body of her own son, whom she had brutally murdered and then chopped into pieces. She did this presumably to prevent his body from ever being found, but the fact that she was able to even conceive of such a plan, let alone execute it, speaks to her cold-blooded nature. Leilani was eventually indicted on 19 counts. These included 1 count of malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, 1 count of concealing the death of another, and multiple accounts of false statements to law enforcement and false reports of a crime. Her actions were unspeakable. As a result, the judge denied her bond, and she was held at Chatham County Detention Center while she awaited her trial. She was reportedly placed in protective custody, since child murderers are usually seen with extreme hatred, even by those who have committed violent crimes themselves. Not long after Leilani was arrested, her mother was also brought into custody.
Continuing coverage now, Quentin Simon's grandmother is in the Chatham County Jail. Billy Joe Howell's arrest is not connected with Quentin's murder. Chatham County's police chief has told us that the only person that investigators are charging in that case right now is the child's mother, Leilani Simon. Billy Joe Howell's charge is related to the custody of her other grandchildren. We have reached out to the juvenile court system here in Chatham County and are waiting back to hear from them.
On December 10th, Billy was also charged with contempt of court. Investigators had now apprehended 2 people, one of whom they believed was directly responsible for the murder of Quentin Simon, and another who may have been tangentially involved. Despite this, there were still 0 answers on multiple fronts. Did Leilani really kill her own infant son? If so, why did she do it? And how? All these questions would be answered in the trial, which began on October 14th, 2024.
The jury walked into court Monday. All Leilani Simon could do was cry. She eyed them as they took their seats, knowing once it's over, they would decide her fate.
The trial began with opening statements. Prosecutors outlined the series of events that led to Quentin's murder and set the stage for the jury to make their decision. They showed evidence that Leilani had driven to a dumpster the night before Quentin was declared missing, to which the culprit responded that she was just trying to get rid of some trash from her car. This proved to be a rather ineffective reply. Why would she throw out garbage in the middle of the night? And since it was already known that she was on substances at the time, it seemed unlikely that she'd decide to do some cleaning afterwards. Multiple people were brought in during the trial. One of these people was Daniel, who by this point had broken up with Leilani.
Getting out of the house that morning, when you left the house and got in the car, did you have any idea that Quentin was gone?
No.
Did you turn the lights on in that room before you left?
No, sir, I did not.
Why not?
I didn't want to wake any of them.
Did you believe that there were 3 sleeping children in that room when you woke up?
I did believe that.
Is it fair to say that you were kind of trying to sneak out without disturbing them?
Yeah, because if I wake them up, then it's a whole thing.
Did you look in Quentin's pack and play before you left?
No, I didn't.
You okay?
Yeah.
At some point during the investigation, was there a period of time where you told the police that you had seen him that morning?
Daniel helped prosecutors flesh out how events unfolded that day. It turned out that he hadn't checked Quentin's playpen and had simply assumed that he was there. According to his testimony, Leilani was the sort of person that frequently became enraged, especially if she was woken up early in the morning. Waking the kids up was even worse because she would blame him for disrupting her sleep. Based on Daniel's statement in court, it almost seemed like he was afraid of her. If her murderous actions against her own son are anything to go by, he was right to be afraid. Prosecutors then started laying out the precise sequence of events that led to Quentin's death. At around 1 a.m., Leilani bludgeoned her son to death with a blunt object. The exact object couldn't be defined, but it was something that was able to kill Quentin fairly quickly. How she managed to dismember her son was harder to explain, and law enforcement officials haven't released that information to the public. In the end, the jury was convinced. Leilani Simon had done the most unspeakable thing anyone could do, and she was callous enough to host parties after committing such a heinous act. On October 26, 2024, just over 2 years after Quentin's death, his mother was convicted of his murder. She was deemed guilty on every single count, so she faces a minimum of life in prison without the possibility of parole. However, considering the effort she put into concealing the crime, not to mention the fact that her victim wasn't even 2 years old, there's a chance that she might receive the death penalty and become the first woman to get sentenced to execution since Kelly Renee Gisdaner in 2015. District Attorney Shalana Cook-Jones summarized it best when she said, "No matter what her sentence will be, this mother will have to live with her actions every single day of her life, and that's a prison of its own." So what do you think of this case? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you like the way we create these videos and you want to help bring more cases like this to light, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thank you once again for watching.